Namaste. Welcome to the 15th video in the overall series and introduction to Sanatana Dharma. This is the second video in the sub-series on the Hindu concept of God. We speak about the concept of God which is universal or universal concepts of God, but which were provided by Hinduism. There's a small correction. Later on, I say that the root Brih gave rise to Brahma, and the qualities associated with Brahma are Brahmatvat and Brahmanatvat. It should actually be Brih, Brahmatvat, Brahmanatvat, Brahma. What I mean, you will understand hopefully as we proceed into the video. Let's proceed. Let us start by having a slight recap, small recap of the earlier video. We basically spoke about the technically correct terms Bhagavan or Ishvara, a couple of attributes that are related to these two terms, Bhagavan and Ishvara. Then we also spoke about how Hinduism not only has just one Parameshwara or Ishvara, but has nothing but Ishvara. We'll touch upon a little more about this in today's video. Also wanted to share two things. One, uh, when I was starting off when I was putting together content for this mini series, uh, I remembered this part about what Sri Shanmugha Sarma Garu had said about Bhagavan, the six aspects of the term Bhaga. I was wondering, okay, how do I kind of search or go through his earlier videos or whatever videos I've seen of him and kind of understand where that uh, exact the way those exact details were available. Believe it or not, so I'm part of a small Telegram group that is run by his followers. That very day, or just around that, just 1 or 2 days around that day when I was putting together the content, there was a video which came out in that series which spoke exactly about that topic. Wonderful coincidence, if you can maybe call it a coincidence. Just wanted to share that. Second aspect is there's a very famous person, I think he calls himself a mythologist, Mr. Devdutt Patnaik. He spoke about the term Bhagavan recently, and on Twitter, I was literally, why are you doing stuff like this? So please be careful about the modern interpretations that come about Hinduism. Please be very careful. And there's no saying whether that person seems knowledgeable uh, or not. Various definitions, weird meanings can always come out. Okay. Now let's proceed. Now remember this shloka. By the way, it is not Guru Brahma, it is Guru Brahma. Guru Brahma, Sandhi becomes Guru Brahma. So the shloka, the very famous shloka, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So two important things. One, it is Guru Brahma. So after every Guru, there is a R because of the Sandhi. Guruhu, Sandhi, Guru. Second thing is, lot of when we say it, right, lot of times we say Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. It is Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. That Shri is actually applicable to the Gurave section of the word. Now, as a child, when I had heard this shloka, I always used to go like, okay, there's Guru, okay, then there's Brahma, there's Vishnu, there's Maheshwara. Why did Brahma come back again? What is so special about Brahma that he finds mentioned twice in the shloka? This Parabrahma is the whole topic of our discussion today. This Parabrahma is not Brahma, or it's not Brahma. If you notice the slight subtle difference, the first Brahma is Brahma, the creator. The second is Parabrahma. There's no Dirgha, there's no Aki Matra, like what people say in Hindi, right? The Dirgha. It is Parabrahma. So this Brahma or Parabrahma is not the creator Brahma, but the supreme principle, the ultimate divinity in Hinduism is called Parabrahma. Ishvara, the ultimate form of Ishvara, God, is actually what is called Parabrahma. Now, we'll go into further details about Parabrahma a little later. However, how did this word actually come about? It is derived from Bruh or Bruhati. I think Adi Shankara gave this uh, definition, Bruhati, or you can also say Brahmatvat or Brahmanatvat. So basically, it is big, that huge, that nature of being humongous, huge, big is what defines this entity or this concept called Parabrahma. It basically is something which is enormous, which grows to be enormous. That is the root for this word. That which grows, blossoms, or bursts forth. That is where the word Brahma or Parabrahma have been, or these two words have been derived from. Now, what is Parabrahma? It is the ultimate cause and basis of everything that ever was, is, and will be. Remember that statement that Hinduism says that not only is there one God, but there is nothing but God. That so-called God in Abrahamic terms is actually called Parabrahma as far as Hinduism is concerned. Now, these are two phrases that are very often used for a Parabrahma. One is Mula Karanam or Mula Vastu. Now, those who speak Telugu, Mula can actually mean a corner. It does not mean that here. Mula basically means root. So that root cause or the root material, the raw material out of which everything that we see has come from is Parabrahma. That is the reason it is called Mula Karanam or Mula Vastu. So again, a subtle difference from the first statement. Parabrahma is the ultimate cause, basis of everything that ever was, is, and will be. No, it is the only thing that ever was, is, and will be. Okay, everything that we see is Parabrahma. This is the Hindu concept of God. I am paraphrasing. So there is a very famous storyteller in Hinduism. He's called Suta Pauranika. He is one of the disciples of Vedavyasa, and Vedavyasa had taught the knowledge of the Puranas to Suta, who popularized the knowledge of the Puranas in the world. So after having read all of that, paraphrasing what he said, Sarvam Brahmamayam Jagat. That is the summary of anything and everything that people ultimately find from Hinduism or the Vedic Dharma, that Sarvam Brahmamayam Jagat. Everything is full of Brahma, is Brahma. That is the core concept of divinity in Hinduism, that God is not separate from the world, but God is the world, or the world is God. God is the world. Okay. Now, can we describe this for a Brahma? By definition, Parabrahma is beyond the senses and thus any descriptions. Not very helpful. Let's see. So, no name. Parabrahma is technically not a name. So, for example, if we look at the Bible, so in fact, the story that I told you earlier, right, that I found that video uh, when I needed it. So, there's a biblical saying, uh, ask and ye shall receive. So again, eyebrows might go up, talking about Vedas, Parabrahma, you're talking about the Bible. As a proud practicing Hindu, I happily accept that there is but one God. I may call that God Ishvara. Somebody calls that God God. Somebody may say Allah. As a Hindu, I subscribe to the belief that there is but one God. Now, there is a very logical question somebody can ask. If there is one God, why are some people against conversion, right? I'm not a big fan. I'm totally against it. Why? There is a saying from the Bhagavad Gita. There's a sloka in the Bhagavad Gita. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. So the emphasis is on especially on the second part. Swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. It is better to perish performing one's dharma rather than to follow somebody else's dharma, which is full of doubt and fear. So, whichever faith you belong to, practice that faith to its logical fulfillment. Do not try to convert people. That's the whole concept. I believe that as a Hindu. Now, the reason I told this story again was, if I remember correctly, in the Bible and in Jewish texts, there is a name called Yahweh, that is, or Yehovah in today's common terms, right? Then Muslims call the divine being Allah. These are actual proper names, they are nouns. Parabrahma is not a name. There is no name for that concept called Parabrahma. It is a description of the concept, but it is not the name of the concept. So there is no name to God or to the ultimate principle in Hinduism. However, all names are his, hers, its, whichever pronoun you want to use. This is the reason, again, I reiterate that Sahasranamas in Hinduism are descriptions of qualities of divinity. They are not necessarily simple names. And that is the reason Hindu names are adjectives and not simple nouns. Okay. Then this concept is neither masculine nor feminine nor neuter. There is no gender. There is no quality. Right? It is not the five elements. It is not creation itself. So I might seem to be contradicting myself. I just said the world is God. The world is God, but but divinity is not limited to the world. It is not limited by the world. Remember the example that we took some time back. The sun reflecting in say 100 pots of water. If the water in the pots moves, the sun does not move. So the ultimate divine being, Parabrahma, is in the world, but is not of it, is not impacted by it. That is the whole beauty of this concept. Not the mind, not the ego. For those who are aware, there is a very famous composition by Sri Adi Shankara. The story behind this goes that Manobudhyankara Chittaninaham Chidanandarupa Shivoham Shivoham. The entire poem goes like this: Chidanandarupa Shivoham Shivoham. Goes like that. Apparently, when Sri Adi Shankara met his guru, I believe Govinda, his guru's name was also Govinda. Govinda Bhagavad Pada, if I remember correctly. Apologize for not recalling it exactly. When he met him, apparently the guru asked him, "Who are you?" And that disciple burst forth into this poem saying, "I am not this, I am not that." Like, not this, not that, not the mind, not the ego. Uh, I The exact name for this particular composition slips my mind. Lot of in fact, Sadguru Jaggi Vasudev, right? I think he likes this composition a lot. This actual composition is by Sri Adi Shankara. Not this, not this, not this. So again, no shape, no qualities. So that concept of having no shape is called Nirakara, or Nirguna has no qualities. In fact, even I think uh, Sikhs also have, I think, borrowed this concept ultimately from Dharma, that Nirakara, right? And all these things are ultimately from the same Dharma. So, no name, no gender, not creation itself, not the elements, not the mind, not the ego, has no shape, has no qualities. The Vedas calls this concept Neti, na iti, na iti, not this, not this. For those on the path of jnana, so there are many paths to God. For those who take this path of jnana, which is slightly different from, say, the path of bhakti or the path of Raja Yoga, the yoga, devotion. Oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. Bhakti is necessary anywhere, but jnana is about using the intellect to an extent. the the point of jnana yoga, or the path of jnana, is about looking at worldly things and saying, this is not God, this is not God, this is not God. This is a very crude way of describing it, because in fact I myself have a very crude understanding. But this is an Advaiti concept called neti, na iti. So we describe this concept of Parabrahma by negation, because we cannot define what it is. Then this is another Upanishadic saying, that yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. Yataha vachaha nivartante aprapya manasa saha. Where words along with the mind turn back, because they simply cannot describe this concept called Parabrahma. It is simply humanly impossible, because the intellect is limited, Parabrahma is unlimited. That is the whole reason why we have this concept of yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha, where the mind and words turn back, unable to describe what Parabrahma is, and also why we have this concept of Neti. Let me share two, three stories and end this particular video for this week. One is, so for the first point is, there are two stories. So remember that book I spoke about some time back, Tales and Parables of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. There are two beautiful stories that he has in that book. One is a story about the wall. Let me start with that. Apparently, there was a wall once. So there were three friends, for example. Somebody got onto the wall. They wanted to see what was beyond this wall. So one guy got onto the wall. So the other two were eagerly waiting for him. Oh, what is? Please describe what is there on the other side of the wall. He said, and suddenly fell off the wall to the other side without saying anything. Second guy does that. He does the same thing. Third guy does the same thing. So basically, there are no words to describe the concept of Parabrahma. And this story is a small way by which Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the Paramahamsa, wanted to illustrate this concept. Second concept is there was a father who had two sons. The uh, father sent both the sons to a Gurukula, to a teacher, to learn about divinity knowledge and all. After some time, they came back. So the father asked one son, what have you learned? He said, sir, father, we've learned about divinity, this, that, this, that. Father was very happy. He said, fantastic. Tell me about Parabrahma. Tell me about the ultimate divine principle. So this son launched into a long lecture. He told a lot of things. The second fellow kept quiet. So to an outside observer, it would probably seem that see the guy who's talking a lot, like me possibly, has actually understood so much from his guru. But the second fellow is a tougher, has not understood anything. But the father said, son, to the other son, the second son who was silent, he said, you have understood the concept of God or divinity, that it cannot be captured by words. And this is the reason that you fell silent. You have understood the concept, my dear other son. If you are able to give lectures on this concept, it means you have not understood, or rather, it means you have not realized that concept. Your brother has understood and realized this concept. These are two stories by Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Please don't stop watching this video series. Hopefully, it will be informative. Second, interestingly, is a dialogue from a hardcore commercial movie called Son of Satyamurthy in Telugu. So there is a particular scene in the movie where somebody is murdered actually. Okay. Now this fellow who's seated there next to the person who was murdered knows that that person is murdered, but the person who's sitting there and has been murdered is murdered by the, let's say, the principal antagonist. Now the principal antagonist hides his true nature from his wife because his wife doesn't like his ways. The guy who's sitting next to the dead body knows this. So he tells to the other person that this is jnanam, this is like jnanam. Guy who knows can't speak, and you can't anyway explain it. This is a dialogue from a hardcore Telugu commercial movie. I happened to meet the director in an airport once, but I told him once that to write this dialogue is fantastic. The reason I'm saying this is to be able to write that dialogue, you need a base understanding of the concept of jnana, ultimate knowledge, right? That he who knows cannot speak, and who he does know, who does not know, you can anyway not make that fellow understand. This is something that can only be realized. I think I took this example sometime back, like riding a cycle. I can read 100 books about reading a cycle. It does not mean I will be able to ride a cycle unless I do it myself. That way, this dialogue, though it is from a commercial movie, has eons of dharmic philosophy underlying that particular dialogue, and therefore I was extremely impressed when I heard that dialogue. And so these are the 2-3 stories I had in mind. And because of this concept of Parabrahma being indescribable, we have pronouns that are used. If you remember that shloka about Vinayaka sometime back, right? Agadanana Padmarkam Gadananam Harnisam Anekadam Tam Bhaktanam Ekadantam Upasmehe Tam, him. Similarly, there is a shloka on Surya. Saptashvrathamarudham Prachandam Kashyapatmajam Shvetapatmadharam Devam Tam Suryam Pranamamyaham. Tam is a pronoun there. Him. If you look at, in fact, very famous Saraswati shloka also. Ya kundendu tushara hara dhavala. And again, there is sa. But ya, sa, yam, yat, tam, tat. the Gayatri Mantra. Tat, what is popularly known as the Gayatri Mantra. I will talk about the concept of the Gayatri in a later video, sometime down the line. However, these pronouns, tat, tam, are used because it is not describable. And this is the whole concept of Parabrahma. Let me end this particular video on this note, that to simplify the concept of Parabrahma, let us take the following two examples. There are a lot of pots. There are different kinds of pots: small, big, pretty, painted, unpainted, red, black, white, yellow, doesn't matter. Ultimately, all those pots are made out of mud, clay, to be more probably technically accurate. There are a lot of ornaments that are available today. Ultimately, all those ornaments are made out of gold. So the pots, the ornaments are the different deities. Creation itself, the worlds, people, animals, trees, rocks, boulders, animate, inanimate, does not matter. Hinduism, in the Lalita Sahasranamam, correct me, I apologize if I am making any mistakes, but there are, let's say, a couple of phrases. Chit Shakti Chetana Rupa, Jada Shakti Jadatmika. Chit Shakti Chetana Rupa, 2, Jada Shakti Jadatmika. So 4. As far as Sanatana Dharma is concerned, nothing is not God. Okay? Not Parabrahma. Boulders, even inanimate things, may have Jada Shakti. Jada is basically something which is dull or kind of dead. Kind of dead. Okay. But that also has a Jada Shakti. And that Jada Shakti is Jadatmika. That Devi, Lalita, Parabrahma, whatever you want to call that energy, is what is present everywhere. And that way, so taking that example, that the mud in pots, the gold in the ornaments, this is how Parabrahma is supposed to exist. And that Moola Vastu, Moola Karanam, mud is the Moola Vastu or the Moola Karanam for pottery to exist. Gold is the Moola Vastu or the Moola Karanam for ornaments to exist. Parabrahma is the ultimate Moola Karanam, Moola Vastu for everything to exist, because Parabrahma just is. So let me end this particular video on this particular note. We will continue this concept in the forthcoming videos also. Thank you very much for watching this video. Namaste.